Some men think capture is the end, that once the rifle is gone, the hands are tied, the boots are taken, the story is over. They imagine surrender is a curtain dropping, a life closing like a book. But capture is not an ending. It is a waiting room. And what happens inside it shapes a man more than any battle ever could. You were taken at dusk. Your platoon had been crossing a narrow valley when machine gun fire tore the formation in half. You dove behind a boulder, rolled down a slope, hit your head on a root, and woke up with boots in your face and a rifle barrel nudging your ribs. Two enemy soldiers dragged you upright by the collar and marched you through the trees without a word. By the time you reached their holding point, the sun had disappeared. Shadows thickened between the trunks. A makeshift outpost stood on a rise, canvas stretched between poles, a single lantern glowing like a small heart in the dark. They pushed you into a corner, tied your wrists, and left you sitting on a crate that smelled of kerosene. For a long while, nothing happened. You listened. Footsteps, muted voices, clinking of steel cups, the crackle of a fire you couldn't see. Your pulse slowed, your breathing steadied. The first lesson of captivity was simple. Stay quiet, stay small, stay forgettable. Men who drew attention drew trouble. Around midnight, a guard sat down across from you. His rifle lay across his knees. He wasn't watching you. Not really. He looked tired, bored, cold. He rubbed his hands together, blew into them, then leaned back against a stump. You studied him the way you studied weather, not because you wanted to, but because knowing the pattern might save your life. He nodded once, almost politely. You nodded back. That was your first piece of luck. Your second came an hour later. A distant explosion shook the ground. A brief light flared over the treetops. The guard stood, alert, shifting his rifle to his shoulder. Voices rose. Someone shouted orders in a tone that hinted things were not going as planned. The guard hesitated, looked back at you, looked toward the noise, then he jogged away. He didn't tie your legs. He didn't double-check your knots. He didn't think a single exhausted prisoner was worth delaying reinforcement. He was right, until he wasn't. The lantern near the tent flickered. Wind pushed smoke through the clearing. You took 2 slow breaths and tested the ropes around your wrists. Rough hemp. Tight, but not perfect. Your left thumb bent farther than your right, a gift from a drunken fall years before. And with enough grinding, enough pain, enough patience, the knot shifted. You worked it for minutes, maybe 10, maybe 20. Pain blurred time, but eventually the rope loosened enough to slip a hand through. Your wrists came free. Now what? You had 2 choices: run for the woods or find something useful first. You chose the second. The supply crate beneath you creaked as you shifted. You lifted the lid carefully, expecting canned food, maybe tools. Instead, you found wire, spools of it, coiled and sharp-edged, enough to fence in a small pasture or surround a temporary camp. Your chest tightened. Wire meant perimeter. Perimeter meant guards. Guards meant no simple escape route. Still, you grabbed a short length, looped it once around your hand, and slipped into the shadows. The camp was small. 4 tents, a fire pit, 2 rifles propped against a stump, and a half-finished enclosure of wooden posts with wire strung between them. You ducked behind the posts, and moved along the half-built fence like a ghost tracing the skeleton of a cage. A shout echoed from the southern ridge. This was your third piece of luck. The enemy was distracted. You headed north, avoiding the firelight. You moved between stacked crates and a water barrel, past a hung coat and a crate labeled in a language you couldn't read. The woods beyond the camp looked close, reachable, dark enough to hide you. Then you saw it. A real fence. Not the weak, half-built thing near the camp. This one was tall, stretched between thick posts and topped with twisted metal that caught the faint moonlight like teeth. The wires were layered, looped, tangled, not designed to stop soldiers, but to slow them, cut them, make them scream. Behind it, a clearing. Beyond the clearing, the forest. Freedom. Distance. Possibility. The fence was the last obstacle. You crouched low, feeling the dirt beneath your palms. The cold soaked through your sleeves. The wire you'd taken dug into your hand, a biting reminder of the weight of decisions. You studied the base of the fence. Some sections sagged where the posts hadn't been hammered deep enough. Others were taut and deadly. One lower corner had shifted where roots had pushed the ground up. You could maybe crawl under it if your jacket didn't snag, if you kept your belly flat, if you moved slow enough to avoid sound but fast enough to avoid discovery. Something rustled behind you. A guard. He wasn't close, but he was headed this way. Boots in the dirt. A beam of lamplight swung across the camp. Voices grew sharper, more urgent. Whatever explosion had happened earlier was causing trouble. If you waited, if you hesitated, if you breathed too loudly, you'd lose the moment. You slid onto your stomach and pushed forward. The earth was cold, damp. Your jacket caught on a root. You held your breath and freed it inch by inch, feeling the wire above you hum faintly in the wind. A twig snapped under your knee, too loud. You froze. Boot steps approached the fence line. You pressed your face into the dirt. The guard came within 20 feet, kept walking, didn't look down, didn't see the shape of a man half buried in the shadow of the posts. You slid farther, farther, farther. The wire grazed your back. A sharp edge sliced a line across your shoulder blade. You bit down on the pain. Once you were clear, you rolled into the brush on the far side and scrambled up the small slope beyond. The forest swallowed you in 3 steps. But escape isn't freedom. Escape is the beginning of the next problem. You didn't know where you were, didn't know how far you'd been taken, didn't know where your unit was anymore. But you walked, through the trees, past shattered rocks, across a narrow ravine where cold water ran over your boots, up a ridge that scraped your hands raw, down the far side where your legs shook from exhaustion. At some point the sky softened, the black faded to gray. Birds began to stir in distant branches. The woods warmed by a degree that felt like mercy. Then you heard it, voices, not enemy, familiar, English, and the metallic click of a bolt being readied. You stepped out from the trees, hands raised. "Friendly," you called. Silence. Then a rifle lowered. Someone exhaled. "Jesus," a corporal said. "Where the hell did you crawl from?" You swallowed. "Under a fence," you said quietly. And it was a long night.
They pulled you in, checked your cuts, wrapped your shoulder. Someone handed you a blanket and half a biscuit. Someone else clapped your back before realizing you were bleeding there. But the moment that stayed with you wasn't any of that. It was crossing the fence. The cold, the dirt, the hum of the wire, the knowledge that if you stuck your head up 1 inch too high, your story would end in a forgotten patch of ground behind enemy lines. Some men think capture is the end, but you learned something different. As long as there's one gap in the fence, as long as a man is willing to crawl, bleed, and bite down on fear, the story isn't over. Not until you say it is.